All right, so Todd, tell me about what your first job was growing up.
Well, that's been a while. I worked at Bonanza on Joe Clifton Drive as a dishwasher. And I'll never forget my first day. I got there and I was working like crazy. We were busy. And we got there at 4 and I'm thinking, gosh, it's probably 9 o'clock. I'll be leaving here any minute. Soaking wet. And I walked back around the corner, looked at the clock. And it was about 5:45, 6 o'clock. And I thought, I'm never going to make it. What about you? What was your first job?
The very first job that I had, I wasn't 16. My mother had to drop me off and pick me up, was bagging groceries at Kroger. And so back when I was working, you had to wear a shirt and tie and you got to wear jeans. And I just remember being out on that hot asphalt, getting carts in the middle of the summer.
So do you still critique everybody that bags the
Oh,
groceries?
absolutely. So it annoys my wife when we go in there. I have to tell everybody, announce to all the baggers, I used to do that job, like a total fool. And I'll even pick the lanes that don't have a bagger so that I can go around and bag my own groceries and see how fast I can do it, which also annoys my wife. But yeah, and then I was also really surprised the first time I got my check. Do you remember that? Your first paycheck?
I made $2.85 an hour was minimum wage at that time. And
That really shows your age, doesn't it?
yeah, it's awful. And well, I know, as we all do when we get that first job, it's the whole why is my check so small
Yeah.
discussion that you have, where you learn the difference between gross and net.
Yeah, you learn quickly.
Yeah.
Today we've got John Anderson, a 17-year veteran of the workforce, right?
That is correct.
And owner of Temps Plus, which is based in Paducah, but I think you reach far further than just Paducah, right?
We mainly cover the purchase area, but we also have employees in Texas, Louisiana, Michigan, and Tennessee.
Awesome. And so you've probably had thousands of interviewing folks over the
Probably
years.
tens of thousands.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Before we get started, Todd's got a question we ask all our guests. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Todd.
it's really important. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
A superpower, what would it be? That's a good question. I think mine would be looking into the future, just being able to maybe fast forward in time. With our staffing agency, we have lots of different projects, that are going on at the current moment. So it'd be neat to be able to see what you could fix, to identify issues and things along that nature.
See, he's so altruistic. If I said that, I would have said, I want to look into the future.
Sports betting.
So I can know what stocks to buy. That's that's the difference between John and
You're like Marty McFly on it. Was it Back to the Future 2? Is that what it was? Or 3 where he gets the sports book?
That's right.
It's a really serious answer, John. Mine was to be able to fly, right?
Well,
Very superficial.
we're very passionate about staffing. That's all we focus on, right?
And you do a lot of it. I know that from experience. An interesting background fact, I once was an employee of Temps Plus, right?
That is correct.
What was it? Probably 25, maybe 30 years ago? Yeah, 25 years ago. I worked at Temps Plus.
I think they've improved their screening process. So.
John swears there's an HR file somewhere that he can put his hands on. So we decided to talk about what should you ask when you're looking for a job, because there's lots of employment opportunities right now. I think folks are really taking a look at what kind of work they want to be doing and how to find the right job and those types of things. So we thought, who else should we bring on other than an HR expert, right?
One question that I had is, tell the listeners a little bit about how you see the job market's changed versus what it was. What was it? Have you seen the difference from 3 or 4 years ago to today?
Yeah, absolutely. And, kind of, maybe picking on Sam a little bit, 10, 15 years ago, everything was done in paper. If you were on the job search, the first place you would typically go would be the Paducah Sun and search through the want ads. Nowadays, I don't know of hardly very few employers, use the actual newspaper. It's all online and job boards.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a post-it note I wrote down monster.com. So when I was, and I think I checked, it's still a viable website, but that's what the website that I used to use for job hunting. Do you remember that?
Mhm.
Monster.
Many years ago.
Yeah. I'd mentioned I used monster.com to look for ads, but things have changed dramatically from that point. But what's changed as far as what employers are looking for and what employees are looking for in employment?
Well, currently, right now, there's so many employers that have positions that are open, and they're seeking to fill them, from industrial manufacturing to CPAs and accounting, specifically, healthcare. If you read in the news, there's just a dearth of folks that are in the job market for various reasons.
Right.
So those employers have immediate needs, and what they're looking for is, simply just folks to help them with their business.
That brought an interesting question. You said a minute ago that most people apply online now. So how would I if I needed a job, how would I make myself stand out? How do I make a good first impression if I'm having to do my initial contact with an employer online?
If you're doing an initial contact online, through one of the job boards of Indeed or maybe Monster, the biggest thing that, employees need to know, or folks that are in the job market, is 99% of the Fortune 500 companies use algorithms to weed out the various resumes that are submitted through an online platform. So when you're tailoring your resume and submitting, to a specific position, you need to make sure that your resume has those buzzwords that are in the job
In the
description.
ad, yeah.
And that's the biggest thing that we see, with the online applications.
So you're saying then that an employee really needs to go back and kind of tailor their resume for each job and not just use a generic resume for every position.
Yeah, the days of having just one resume for 15 positions that you're applying to,
That's old school.
That's really kind of old school.
Is there anything that when you're doing a resume, that if you see something on a resume that just goes to the shred file? Is there a don't that on a resume?
The biggest don't that I see is these really silly email addresses that people list. And it could be something as
So sam@hotmama.com is probably not what you're looking for?
country girl or a country boy or I'm a fisherman guy. Probably, you should try to pick a different email address.
I hadn't thought of that.
That's pretty funny.
I hadn't thought of that.
I've seen some resumes they've got like taglines underneath their name, like highly motivated rock star or things like that. I actually appreciate that because it makes me kind of look, they put some kind of thought into their resume. Then do people still use cover letters? Because when I'm looking for folks, first of all, we do use Temps Plus for some of our positions, but when I'm looking for folks with our office, if I see a cover letter that is not specifically addressed to our office, if they know who it is, I'm not a fan of it. What's your position on that?
Nowadays we see, probably less cover letters. The first thing that we do is, you go to the resume right off the bat. Depending upon the position that you're applying for, maybe some of the upper level, higher salaried positions, where a cover letter is going to add a little bit to your resume, might be appropriate. But for most of the positions that, we receive now, it's just the standard resume.
Gotcha. So you talked about some of the places to start searching. You talked about like the monster.com job board or Indeed. But tell me about firms like Temps Plus. Tell me about that.
Yeah, sure. A great way to assist in your job search is you engaging a staffing agency. And the best thing about the staffing agencies and Temps Plus Employment Services is it's no cost to the job applicant. There's no charge for their services. And it's a great way to, get your foot in the door with some of the companies that, are not necessarily posting all their job postings on the job boards.
Right.
And it's a really great way to, to try out the companies before you hire. But with the staffing agencies, you're going to get a white glove service to kind of navigate you through the employment process.
Right.
And from the employer perspective, I used to think I was good at hiring people, and I think I've realized over the last couple of years I'm not very good at that. And I think there's a lot of value to be had by having someone in that business
Weed it out.
Yeah. And say, no, you don't want this person if they've got this characteristic that's probably not going to fit with your organization. I think that's a real value
Absolutely.
from the employer side.
And staffing agencies like Temps Plus, it's not just temporary jobs, right?
No, I mean the majority of our placements are the temporary to direct hire. So it's a situation where the company tries the employee out, the employee tries the company out.
Test drive. It's a test drive, essentially.
Yeah, it's a good way to
Candidate, yeah.
try before you hire.
Yeah.
It's a good fit. Then they transfer off of our payroll onto the company's payroll. That's typically when you see an increase in wage or extension of benefits and things along those lines.
Right.
So if we've gone to kind of an online digital world, are you doing? Are employers moving to still doing in-person interviews? Are they doing them by phone? Are they Zoom? And if there are differences, are there different things you should do in those?
Yes, absolutely. Nowadays, specifically, with Zoom, increasing, you're seeing a lot more of the, virtual meetings, virtual interviews, a lot of telephone interviews to speed up the process, a lot of the initial steps, in the hiring process. Each one's a little bit different. If you're doing a telephone interview, you obviously need to have, a quiet setting where it's not interrupted, speak, clearly, and you be able to communicate. On Zoom and if you're using any audio visual, it's really the same thing. You want to wear Zoom solid colored shirts, something's comfortable, make sure that you're not interrupted where you have dogs or young kids running around, things along those lines. And then the in-person interview, you're going to pick up on a lot of the nonverbal clues that you wouldn't be able to see
on Zoom.
Zoom. And that's the real benefit of the in-person. You're going to be able to see their gestures, the tone of voice, how they carry themselves.
Well, we're going to take a break for a few minutes. When we get back, we're going to go over some specific questions that may come up in your interview or how to set yourself apart when you're interviewing for a new position.
What Should You Ask is more than just the name of a podcast. It's something you should say to yourself whenever you need legal advice. The attorneys at Farmer & Wright can tell you exactly what you should ask. With over 55 years of combined legal experience, they can guide you through the legal nightmares you can face following an accident. Questioning the other driver and their insurance and how to financially recover from an accident, Farmer & Wright know the answers and can get you results. Visit Farmer Wright, that's wrightwithaw.com, to get a free copy of their book, Finding Help When You Are Injured. Farmer & Wright, helping you know, what should you ask? The information provided on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as legal advice on any subject matter. You should not act or refrain from acting based on any content mentioned without seeking legal or other professional advice in your area. The hosts, guests, and sponsors remove themselves from all liability for actions you take or fail to take based on any content in this broadcast.
So we're back. We've got John Anderson, a 17-year veteran in the hiring industry and the owner of Temps Plus, based in Paducah, but doing lots of work in the Purchase area, right, and several other states. So, John, one of the questions that we have is applying for a position. Do you need to do anything besides clicking and sending your resume? So, especially through job boards like Indeed and things, what do folks need to do? How do you stand out?
The first thing that they need to do in their job search is, to treat it as a job. To stand out, it's, as much information as they can gather about the company, about the position, who's doing the hiring, why is the position open, the company, the culture,
right,
things along those lines.
Let me ask you, so if I was applying for a job right now, I'd do a couple things, but one of the things I would do is if I applied on Indeed, for example, and I knew the company, I would absolutely send something to the hiring manager in the mail. Well, it wouldn't be in the mail. It would be by UPS or FedEx that says, please take a look at my resume. I know I'm supposed to apply. It would say something like, I know I'm applying through Indeed, but I just wanted to let you know I've submitted my application. So what do you think about that? Is that over the top, too aggressive, Johnny?
No, I think that's an excellent way to do it. Anytime that, you can use friends or network or, personal contact, in addition to, the, resume submittal, that's an excellent way to, to land a job. It's kind of the blend of the old school versus the new school.
Right.
And, using kind of the best of both.
Gotcha.
So when you're applying for a job, let's say I get past the resume submission, I get invited for an interview. I think most people kind of ask standard questions
Yeah.
in a resume. So
Like, what's your biggest weakness?
yeah, what do you see as some of the standard questions that people need to be able to answer?
Sure. When it comes to the interview, it's the one opportunity that you have to sell yourself. And no one else is going to be able to sell your skill set or your, attributes better than you. So you need to be ready to come and talk about your attributes and how you can match up with the company. But, one of the first questions we always ask is, tell me a little bit about yourself and walk me through your resume.
Yeah.
What do you know about our company? Why are you in the job market? If there are, say gaps in your resume, why are there gaps there? When you're, walking through the resume or asking questions, always tie it to a story.
Like, you want me to tell the applicant a story, or do we want the applicant to tell us a story?
Well, a lot of times, the interviewer is just as nervous as the person that's getting interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes, they'll struggle on, what questions to ask, or,
Right.
How it goes. And so, it's a little bit of both. A great question for an employee to ask, in an interview is, what's a typical day like at Farmer and Wright?
Gotcha.
That brings up an interesting point. I think in all the interviews I've ever done, I've always asked the applicant, is there any questions that you have for me? And I never feel like the applicant is very prepared
No.
with questions. So if you're the applicant and you get asked that question, how should you respond to that?
Well, you should respond to it with questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Take the time to do a little bit of research. Most all companies have a website that will trigger why is this job posting out here?
Right.
What does it take to succeed?
Right.
Type of thing.
I did have somebody ask me what skill set would a successful applicant have for this position, which I thought was a pretty good question. Yeah.
And if someone doesn't have any questions, it's kind of like you didn't really take enough time to prepare
it's
for the
kinda flat.
interview, or
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be anything really complex, but it's what's a successful employee,
Right.
what's their attributes?
Yeah, what's a successful employee in your eyes? So we get through, I got through the interview, I got to the interview, I got through the interview, and I know it's down to me and 3 or 4 other people.
What do you do?
What do I do? What's that last thing where I could make a wow? Or how do you differ? Is there anything you can do after the initial interview to maybe get you over the hump?
Sure. And just kind of following back up to that after the interview, one of the best questions to end an interview is what's the next step in this process? When should I hear back from you?
Always be closing, right, John?
Always be closing. So, if it is, we should hear back from, the company within a week, and you don't hear back, then it might be an appropriate time to send a follow-up, email.
Right.
The old school, way, if you're really looking to, stand out, is to send a thank you card to the guy or the lady.
I got a question for you. So we use something called Loom. I think the website is it Loom.com.
Loom, yeah.
So Loom.com, LOOM like Mary.com, and you can shoot a quick video. You copy the link, you paste the link in an email, hit send, The recipient doesn't have to download any software. They click the button, it's a video. What about a Loom thank you video? A thank you for interviewing me. It shows you're digital, you're essentially reciprocating in the same manner if it was a Zoom interview. What would you think about that? Would you be weirded out?
It would depend upon the position, if it was appropriate or not.
When would it not be appropriate, John?
I think that would be great because it would show me that the person spent a little bit of time. All I really want is the person
Yeah.
to spend some
Just a
time.
little bit. Just a
little
little.
bit of time thinking about how do I get this job,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, handwritten thank you notes and things, are they still in or no?
When you receive one, you notice it.
Absolutely.
It's not over the top or that nature. If you're looking to stand out, that's a way to do it. Another way is just to the more folks that you have talking about you, in the job market in a positive way, the better your opportunities are going to be.
Yeah.
Well, that brings up a really interesting question, and I think something that people don't realize. Tell me about the effect of Facebook
Boy.
on the interview process.
Yeah.
It can kill it pretty quickly.
Have you had experiences where, let's tell a good story, how about that? Have you had an experience where you thought someone was otherwise qualified, and first of all, do you go check Facebook?
We do. We check it daily. And the reason we check it daily, because we learned a lesson a long time ago. We had sent an applicant to one of our clients that was hiring, and the first thing that they did was check out their Facebook page and said, hey, listen, did you know X, Y, and Z about this person?
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, dang, we better do some research.
Yeah.
And so, companies look at Facebook, they look at Instagram, they look at your social media postings. You have to be aware of it. You have to be aware of what your friends are posting. It's there for, a reason, but it's, it's out there.
Right.
So I guess the moral of that story is you need to do a scrub before you go to any job interview because...
Yeah, because the employers are looking. Employers are looking.
So if you want to listen to the podcast, we're everywhere. Go to wherever you normally listen to podcasts, whether that be Spotify, Apple Podcast. We're on all the main channels. You can also watch us on Facebook Live or on YouTube.